for Ottawa County. Mark Bennett, he's on the other side of our Zoom connection. Mark, good morning. Welcome to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question about law enforcement, you can call Mark at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. During my 2 decades in this town, Mark has been one of the leading figures in terms of speaking for the department in detective matters. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to detective work, especially because there's many aspects of law enforcement, Mark, that come into play, be it traffic, be it beat patrol, be it water patrol and all that. What drew you to the detective side of work?
Well, that's a very good question, Gary. And I started in those other disciplines of law enforcement, the traffic unit. I was a tactical officer for many years here at the sheriff's office. But what intrigued me about investigations and detective work was being able to work more closely with victims and victims' families and building cases, putting together those puzzles of facts that it takes to adjudicate a case or come to a conclusion in a case, and just that together, and then working with the fine men and women in law enforcement in West Michigan. I think we're extremely blessed to have the level of professionalism amongst the staff, and the great community support is phenomenal. So that's intriguing to me.
616-395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Sheriff's Detective Captain Mark Bennett.
Hey, how about that woman that got murdered over 30 years ago? Way out by West South. You guys are still working on that case?
There's a few cold cases you've been working on there, Mark.
Yes, there is. And we've been fortunate enough here in the county as well to be able to establish a cold case team. We've been successful in cases such as the Gail and Rick Brink homicide case from 1987. There's a Deb Polinsky homicide case, which is maybe what your caller's referencing, in 1977, as I said. So we've been able to work on those cases, make some great headway. And in some of those instances, we've been able to give some closure to the families. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, especially.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, appreciate the call. Thank you. 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. I want to backtrack for a moment, Mark. And when we were asking about what drew you to detective work, and you mentioned victims' rights, I remember one of the first pieces of legislation that came on board when I first came here in 01, 02 was victims' rights legislation passed or championed by the late state lawmaker Bill Van Regenmorter. We had a chance to get to know Bill before his passing. Talk a little bit about that victim rights bill, how that helps. It really helps law enforcement and those who have been, unfortunately victimized, especially by violent crime.
Well, first of all, I too had the pleasure of knowing Bill Van Regenmorter, and there's a man who cared genuinely about the community, about victims, and specifically victims' rights. So what that piece of legislation I feel has done for us over the years is given those victims' families and those victims a voice, and in the statute certain parameters that have to be adhered to so that their concerns are taken care of. Assistance for remaining families of victims, systems for victims who are alive and need to get some help in restarting in certain aspects. So that's been very beneficial, and I think that was a catalyst for us here at the Sheriff's Office to even focus more on the victims of crimes and assisting them and their families.
If you got a question for Ottawa County Sheriff's Detective Captain Mark Bennett, he'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. I'm not certain if I brought this up in an earlier conversation we have had over the years with you, Mark, but I sort of want to revisit this particular aspect of the work that you do. We have, and I say we, the general public, has an image of detective work that can be created either through dramas on television, in the movies, or created through reality TV that tends to be a little on the dramatic side. Obviously, detective work has its rewards, but talk a little bit about why maybe some of these detective shows that people see, shall we say, not really reality in the sense that of what you and others in the field really do.
It's a very good point you bring up, Gary. So when you watch the detective shows and even the reality shows to a large extent, they're trying to add the drama to capture their viewers, to make it interesting. In real life, detective work investigations are very, very tedious. So if I was to take you through the course of an investigation, most people, for the most part of the investigation, would find it very monotonous, and in some cases a little boring. Okay, but when we break down a case and begin to gather the facts and put it all together, the conclusion of that is what is rewarding for us. Whether or not we determine that a certain individual is not involved in a crime, or whether or not the facts play out that an individual is involved and there's a potential of criminal charges. So that is the reality of investigations when you break that down. I too like an occasional police show on TV. My favorite happens to be Blue Bloods because I'm from a law enforcement family. My children are both in law enforcement, so that rings kind of close to my heart. But it's still drama. It's still made for TV, and it's made to hold the viewer and entertain the viewer.
For those who are listening to us, but also if you see the Zoom video, and we have the Zoom video working with Mark Bennett, no, he does not look like Tom Selleck.
No, far from it.
And most, well, let's put it this way, most who are in the field, they don't even look like Jerry Orbach. I mean, come on. But these, and the other thing too, and again, I share with Mark in the sense that, my dad was a Detroit officer for 26 years. So I'm well aware of some of the challenges that those in law enforcement, as I say, those in blue or brown, are facing. But another thing, and I always point out when people talk to me about some of these things, is that, listen, a lot of these dramas and a lot of these reality shows, they got to compress things. They can't spend a whole hour dealing with somebody typing out, in the old days, now computer inputting out a report to give to the prosecutor's office. I mean, that takes about as long as one of these shows lasts. And that's just part of it. Everything gets so compressed. And that, to a certain extent, it has to be kept in mind when you're watching a good detective show.
Right. So in a typical death investigation that we would undertake here at the sheriff's office, we may have upwards of 80 to 120 hours into a case with multiple detectives writing a dozen or 24 search warrants. And to your point, Gary, to put all that in an entertainment setting, in as far as a drama or a show, wouldn't hold the viewer. But in reality, that's what it is: long and tedious to get to where we need to be to find the facts.
Not only to find the facts, but be able to make a case that, in the case of Ottawa County, before his retirement, Ron France, and now, clear my mind, I'm drawing a blank, Mark, about our new not sheriff, but the new prosecutor now.
Oh, Lee Fisher.
Yeah, okay. It was...
Yeah.
A few other names came to mind. Craig Bunce was one of them off the bat. Of course, he's now a judge, but he used to be in the prosecutor's office. But the point I was making before my mind went blank was, it takes a while to be able to construct a case that can go to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor can be able to bring it forward, to give a case of beyond a reasonable doubt. And sometimes that's not as easy as you might think.
Right. And sometimes at the end of an investigation, we just find that we lack that last piece of the puzzle that's going to bring it to the point of it being charged. And, that's okay. We'll continue to investigate. And if that new piece or if that missing piece comes forward, we can re-energize. But we'll have, in a major case, we'll have multiple meetings with the prosecutor, briefing settings. We'll come up with game plans. We'll go out and a team of detectives will complete the task for that day or that time period. And then the next increment will come back and brief. So those major cases especially can take days, weeks, and weeks. Even if somebody is already arrested, we don't stop the investigation at that point. We have to continue that investigation up to the point of essentially trial. That continues. So it does take a large amount of staff hours, but at the end of the day, it's all worth it, getting justice.
616-395-1450. If you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff's Detective Captain Mark Bennett, getting people to cooperate in an investigation, are you finding that tougher? Or is it as tough or challenging as it has been over the years? Or are you finding more people, just say, clamming up when the authorities come around?
So what we're finding is the better you do in building community relations and community trust, the better you're going to get info. The more info you're going to get, people trust you, they'll talk to you. Now, that doesn't happen in every single case. And we're finding, unfortunately, I think in my experience, the younger offenders who well below the age of majority, who for some reason don't think they have to cooperate at all, and don't think that don't have much respect for authority, unfortunately. But by and large, I think you're going to get the information a lot more efficiently and effectively if you build a good community relation.
616-395-1450. You have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff's Detective Captain Mark Bennett. I do need to bring this issue up, and it sort of dovetails into the cooperation factor. A lot of times we have seen where cooperation has not happened in cases that would be, I'll phrase it this way, that could be seen as gang related. Mm-hmm. How much of a problem, I don't want you to forecast, but how much of a problem is the gang situation right now on the Lake Shore? We had a surge. Then when the Latin Kings got busted up, it went down a little bit. Where are we standing now?
Well, I think it's present. I think we have some gang concerns present, but I think at present we're able to manage those concerns effectively. And one of the things that's been very effective for us, and I won't speak for the Holland Police Department, but we work together closely all the time. But what's worked for us is a school resource program. The deputies and the officers in the schools who are able to identify young folks who are at risk and maybe be more enticed to be involved in a gang, and to get those folks early on to try to assist them in steering their lives properly. That's helped. And then also those school resource officers are a very, very good tool for us investigatively when we go to investigate a crime that may be, for instance, gang related or group related. They could identify, well, who may have been with who, and this individual is described as such and such. Well, that must be so and so. So that's invaluable, and I think that's gone right to the heart of us being able to keep a handle, or at least a management of gang issues.
This might be a stereotype question, Mark, and I apologize if that's the case. With the gang issue, is it more along the lines of a US 31 issue? In other words, up and down from Holland to Grand Haven in the county? Or do we see that a little bit more further inland, Hudsonville, Jennison, Coopersville? Is this more of a lakeshore problem, or is it throughout the county that you have to keep an eye on it?
I think most often it's centered towards the lakeshore, but what we're seeing though is pockets in each community. But more concerning is transient gang issues from the city of Grand Rapids, from Muskegon, Wyoming, even Chicago. A risk you probably have heard of the problems we're having at the cell phone stores. Unbelievable. And again, in my long career, it always amazes me how trends turn, but these individuals committing these crimes are 14, 15, 16 years old, and kind of, orchestrated by somebody older who's not on scene. And yet these individuals commit the crimes, they take off from scenes. We've been involved in some short chases with them, and we just don't want to put the rest of the public at risk for chasing a kid essentially for these crimes. But it's problematic, and it's problematic getting involved or getting to the root, getting to the kingpins, if you will, that are orchestrating this. So I wouldn't say it's exclusively a lakeshore problem, but it's a transient problem that we're trying to address.
And you brought up those cell phone stores, and that exact, I was thinking that way. And then you mentioned, and the thing hit because on the east side of the county, yeah, the cell phone stores have been burglarized, and the reports we see is the suspects are seen fleeing east, heading out back towards Grand Rapids. So yeah, the eastern part of the county may not have its own homegrown problem. It's sort of bleeds in out of Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. You're on the line with Ottawa County Sheriff's Captain Mark Bennett.
Yes, good morning. Hey, appreciate what you guys do. I have a lot of relatives and friends that have gone through different forms of police in Ottawa County and things like that, and just appreciate what you guys do. One thing that's being brought to light today is the Derek Chauvin case and all this. And I guess I have a question, watching those videos, they put up a fight for about 15 minutes before they could actually get him under control. And I guess I don't understand, when somebody puts up a fight for that long, what are the other options? Is there any way to tranquilize people that are so far out of control and you're trying to arrest them and they just won't oblige? I don't understand why there aren't other options. I'll take my question off the air.
All right. Thank you very much for the call, Mark.
So that's an interesting case, and obviously because of the notoriety of it, I think most people know the basic facts. There was a fight in that particular situation, and I've been in those situations over the course of 35 years. In this case, the officers had backup at the scene. The individual, Mr. Floyd, was resistant at first, but unfortunately at the time that most of all the videos are captured, there wasn't any resistance anymore. So the options are restraints. I think to your caller's question, as far as tranquilizing, they got to be really careful about introducing any drugs or anything of that nature. In that scenario, you don't know what the individual is suffering. We do have less lethal options. For instance, tasers can be used, but that's all part of training. I don't know the training records of Chauvin. All I know is the 9 minutes of video where he uses a tactic that I've never been trained in, and I don't know of any other law enforcement officer that has been trained in a tactic of subduing an individual in that manner. So that's the crux here. I think police training is a topic that we can always evolve, and I think new techniques, new equipment are always good to look at. But in this situation, it's just a very, very tragic event using a technique that should never have been used. And to my knowledge, never been trained in.
One final thing, Mark Bennett, and I will bring this up with the advice of Sheriff Steve Kempker. You are retiring after 33 years with the office at the end of the month on Wednesday. As you step down from law enforcement, looking back, I know we only got maybe a couple of minutes to do this, but what things can you say, yeah, I was a part of that and you're pleased about during your time with the Sheriff's Department? And if we have time, maybe something that you wish you could have been able to do during your time in the Sheriff's Department.
So I think one of the things that I'm most grateful for is being blessed with the opportunity to work with such fine men and women at this agency and surrounding agencies. Some of the things I'm proud of is being able to help those victims and victims' families get closure to their case, whether it was a homicide or a little less serious than a homicide, being able to be their sounding board, and then being blessed to being able to lead the fine men and women of the agency, be a part of our executive team here that makes some of the policy decisions, and serving the community. I've always, since I was a little elementary school boy, I always wanted to be a police officer, and I got to realize my dream. And now I have two children that are both police officers. So it's just incredible the support the community gave us. And me, particularly through the course of my 33 years here at Ottawa, 2 years prior to that for the City of Zeeland. Couldn't ask for any more. I leave loving to come to work every day still. This morning I drove into work, just even with 4 days left, loving it. So other opportunities have arisen, and it's time to pass the torch. But I'll never forget the opportunity to serve the citizens here. It's been an awesome ride.
He is Ottawa County Sheriff's Detective Captain Mark Bennett, and I think I can speak for a lot of people in this community. We thank you for your service to our community. We wish you well. Hopefully it's a happy and safe retirement for you and your family. And we thank you for joining us this morning on WHTC's Talk of the Town. We hope to be able to chat with you again as a regular citizen to citizen a little bit later on down the road. Mark, thank you.
Thank you. I'd be always willing to do and happy to do that, Gary. You have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mark Bennett on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.